Wop, wee. Hi and welcome back. Everybody who gave me birthday wishes, thank you a lot. It was the 2nd of December last weekend. Of course, I am now 37. Wow, almost 40. And still playing video games. Of course I do. I'll play video games up until I freaking die. And for the birthday, I actually got from my friends. I got Star Ocean Second Story R for the PS5. I'm really curious about that game. But for my parents, I got One Piece Odyssey that still needs to be shipped. It's like on a back order or something. And I got Final Fantasy 16. And I want to talk about Final Fantasy 16. Now, I'm always, at least I try to always be open minded about sort of new games, especially in a franchise that is so dear to my heart. My heart's here, by the way, not here. Dear to my heart is Final Fantasy. If you are new to my channel, Final Fantasy is basically my favorite video game franchise of all time. And Final Fantasy VII is my favorite and also the best video game of all time. I especially love Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, and 10, even 10 too. I even like 10 too. However, Square Enix decided to go completely different. Every Final Fantasy is sort of different, but I mean, let's be honest, Final Fantasy 15 is completely different than all the other Final Fantasies. And Final Fantasy 16 is even sort of going further into the action genre instead of turn based. And even more, more, for the first time ever, actually, really dark and like really, really dark. Game of Thrones style dark. And the game is inspired by Game of Thrones. Even sort of the world map is exactly like Game of Thrones. Now, I started playing this game last week. I just wanted to try it out because I was playing like other stuff on Xbox, playing Fable and I think Red Faction 2 at the time. So I was playing, I thought to myself, let's try it out. Let's try Final Fantasy 16 out. So I was playing and playing, and I played the demo, and I thought that the storyline was really interesting. The character was Clive was pretty interesting. The world was interesting. The whole stuff with the blight and with the bearers, and they need magic to survive. But magic is slowly sort of going away, and the land is sort of slowly being destroyed by the blight. And what is everything? I love that. I love lore in video games, especially RPGs. I think Final Fantasy is always maybe one of the best Japanese RPGs ever because they just create such massive, immersive, that's what I want to say, immersive worlds and characters. And 15 to me was a good game. It was a good game. It was a letdown in some ways, but it was still a fun game. The combat system was super easy. It was so bland, so simple. And I'm like, to me, that's not what Final Fantasy should be. But of course, I'm not a developer, so I don't decide what a Final Fantasy game should be. So again, open minded, I liked the demo, but I did think or thought that the combat system was really simple. You have a couple of abilities that you can use, and basically you're just hack and slashing through all the enemies. So I started playing the full game, of course, and basically you get where you last ended with the demo. And I played it for an hour, and then 2 hours, and then 3 hours. And then I think the Sunday, I played the whole day. And slowly and surely, I started to realize hey, really like this game. It's actually a lot of fun to play. And Clive is actually a really cool character. And I also really like Jill. And I'm starting to be more immersive and be more interested in what is happening in the world, what is happening, what's going on with Jill and this and that. And I started to even do side quests because certain side quests gives you tiny bit of information about the world. Even though the side quests are horrible. It's basically, I need a flower to make a new potion, so go and fetch the flower and bring it back. That's it. A friend of mine, he got lost in the woods. Go get him and get him back. Oh, there's a really strong enemy, a really strong monster roaming the world. Very dangerous. Go there and kill the monster. Cliche, cliche, cliche. But some of these quests do have, as I mentioned, a little bit of storyline segments that are quite interesting because I want to know more about what is happening, why is it happening, how does the world work in this particular game, and as you unlock more summonings, icons, you unlock more abilities. So all of a sudden, you don't really have two abilities. You have a lot of different abilities, and you can sort of mix and match the summonings. Not all the abilities, but you can mix and match the summonings up until 3. So even though, let's be completely honest, even though you could potentially play the entire game button mashing and using the 2 default abilities, it is way more fun to create combos because you can switch between the 3 summonings that you have equipped. You can switch between them on the fly and then do combos. You can do like a phoenix attack and then put sort of bash the enemy up and then do whatever, a Rambo attack with lightning. You can create really cool looking combos, and the combat system is really fast and flashy. Really fast and flashy. But really fluid. At least I'm playing it on action mode. It runs fluid as hell. It looks really cool. It's a lot of fun to play with the battle system. But again, if you want to nitpick, yes, you can button mash and use only 2 abilities the entire game. But I'll tell you, it is not a lot of fun. It's way cooler to mix and match. I mean, Devil May Cry, a game that is basically around doing really cool over-the-top combos, you can basically button mash your whole way with the same attack over and over again. But of course, we all know that's not a lot of fun. Graphically, the game looks stunning. It looks really cool. And as I sort of, thought to myself, maybe even talked about in videos, this generation isn't really about, a leap forward into graphics. It's more of what you're going to see in a distance. And you can really tell that Square Enix put a lot of effort into making the world feel grand and large, even though it is not an open world game. It's sort of like Tales of games or like White Hat Chronicles, where you have big levels, you could say. The game even calls it chapters. So you have big levels, but it's sort of connected between, kind of like Dark Souls, right? It's sort of linear paths, but it's still all connected to one. And you can basically, from your hideout, you can move freely once in a while, all the places that you have been through. So it's not that you're locked into, you only have to go from A to B and that's it. Nope, you can backtrack, you can go back, you can do side quests, you can go onto hunts, and of course you can level up and grind if you want to. Storyline wise, of course, I won't say much, only that it is really good. It's really, really good. It is, I won't say Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10 good, but we're close. It's getting really, really close at being one of the best Japanese RPG stories that I have played through in a very long time. Very long time. It's probably one of the best aspects of what you're going to tell yourself, oh yeah, that's Final Fantasy. The storyline is so good, it's Final Fantasy. So the storyline is really cool. Every time you're into a certain segment and it's done, because again, the game calls it chapters, you want to sort of go further. You want to play more. You want to know more. You want to know what's next. And last weekend, I was playing, and there was a certain segment of the game, and it was so good, and the whole storyline was so interesting. For a second there, I thought to myself, holy shit, Final Fantasy is back. It's freaking good. Where with Final Fantasy 15 and even 13, even though I love the graphics and art style of Final Fantasy 13 and the characters, 13 is sort of the last game that looked like a Final Fantasy game. But still, with 13, I'm like, it number one, it was super complicated. Like, what the hell are they all talking about? And it wasn't really that interesting. And Final Fantasy 15 was really, I would say, bland, like a really simple, generic, bland storyline. And that is because you had to watch movies, anime, play play like a side game to understand the full story, the full scope of what is going on in the world of Final Fantasy 15. And of course, Final Fantasy 15 itself, even though it was open world, felt really small because it was just one big city and a couple of small settlements. Where now they really sort of created a world that feels open world, but it's not. But talking about graphics, because I'm sidetracking again, the graphics are really good, but Red Dead Redemption 2 on the PlayStation 4 looks better in every aspect. In the aspect of characters, the world itself, how it looks. Red Dead Redemption 2 looks better than Final Fantasy 16. And I don't know why that is. I honestly don't know how. Like, how can they do it? Final Fantasy 7 Remake looks better than 16. But then again, as I said, you have massive vistas where you're like on top of a hill, and in the far distance, you see like a castle. And you know, the environments really reminds me of Elden Ring. Like the art style, like Elden Ring. And that is something really good. The music is probably, after the side quest, the worst part of the game. Final Fantasy was always, at least for me personally, the top of video game soundtrack, RPG soundtrack. And I'm not entirely sure. Well, actually, I'm kind of sure, but I think they've made a lot of older Final Fantasy tracks and they sort of remixed it. That is pretty cool. It's really cool to sort of, you're like, hey, isn't that the battle music of Final Fantasy 8 or 10? It's really cool. That's really cool. And the boss battle music in the game is epic. It's pretty epic. I love epic vocal music. I really do. So that's really cool. That's actually one of the segments where I was like, holy shit, Final Fantasy's back, because everything clicked together and the music, I'm like, oh, holy shit, yeah, that's really cool. It really hyped me up, pumped me up to try and beat the boss. Talking about beating the boss, by the way, the game is super easy. It really is easy. I haven't died a single time. Not once. It's really easy. So the music. The music. All the sort of slow town music or just the music when you're just walking around the world, it's just like, it's fine. It's okay. It's good. But it's not Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy to me has such a high standard, a high bar. Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10 soundtrack, in my personal opinion, are absolutely unbeatable. They're god tier gaming music in general. And I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna, hear some really good fantasy music. And it's like, it's fine. It's not bad. It's just, I don't know. Like, this is music I could hear in Skyrim or Dragon Age. Not that these soundtracks are bad. I'm just saying it's not up to my Final Fantasy standard. But everything else, I am having a absolute blast playing Final Fantasy 16. I was wrong to think that Final Fantasy 16 would be a bad game, would be bland and generic. And even though Clive doesn't really look as cool as Claude or whatever, he's still really cool, and I really like his personality. Sid is also a really cool character, um, and I really like the interactions between them. So yeah, I'm really really happy. Final Fantasy VII Remake was already like, hell yes, they've done it. They've created a great game that was already a incredibly good game, and they've made a really good remake. Completely different art, completely different sort of way to play the game, but it's really good. I can't freaking wait for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And the last thing I actually want to say is, in terms of sort of Final Fantasy 16's graphics, again, it looks really good, but it does feel a little bit like the bigger budget is on 7 Rebirth instead of 16. That's quite weird. But as I said, I really love 16. I do miss the charm of the bright colors of Final Fantasy. I do miss different races, different art design, different architecture. I do really miss that. Basically, they're only humans in the game. Well, you have bearers, but go play the game and you understand that they're basically humans with magic. And they're kind of slaves to normal humans, even though that's really weird. It's probably be the other way around in reality. And it's basically wars, human against humans. And that's fine. It's completely fine. War is never fine. But the impact to me is bigger if it's war against different races. Completely different races, like you have in like Final Fantasy 9. So leave it in the comments below. Are you playing Final Fantasy 16? Have you played Final Fantasy 16? And where would you rate the game in sort of the world of Final Fantasy? Now, I'm not going to do that, of course, but I will tell you, if Final Fantasy 15 to me was like a 7.5, yeah, 7.5. Final Fantasy 16 is like an 8 to 8.5, and it is slowly creeping to a 9. It's slowly going towards that 9 being a great, fantastic game, and being, as I said, Final Fantasy is back. It's a really really good RPG. Probably the best you can play at the moment on your PS4, PS5. On your PS5. So leave it in the comments below. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me. I'm old. I'm 37. Wee.